All right, we saw a preseason in the books, and I figured it could be a fun video to talk about what we're all really here to talk about, the quarterbacks and how they played in the preseason. I'm going to be ranking the first round quarterbacks and how I thought they played this preseason. I'm also going to include Will Levis in the mix. He was technically an early second rounder, but he was talked about as a first round talent, so I think it's fair to include him as well. So let's just get into the mix, starting off with number 4. Number 4 is Will Levis. So unfortunately, I include him in the list only to then be the last place on the list, as the number you see next to his name, not number 4, that's obviously where he ranked, but on the right is 46.4. That's where he what he graded in terms of Pro Football Focus grades. So that's not great. That's not good. You ideally want to be better than that kind of grade. Of course, I don't want to just take a PFF grade and not look into it, so I also decided to watch a lot of his film, and I kind of agree. The reality is, he's someone who, personally, I have to say this, I've never understood the Will Levis hype. I didn't have him as a first round talent when I did my evaluation. I said, maybe, I think I even had him as a third rounder, to be honest. I didn't fully get the hype with Will Levis. I didn't really see the upside that a lot of people talked about. So I'm already just not someone who's a Will Levis fan. Whatever people like about him, I'm apparently missing. So that needs to be mentioned right off the top. So it's totally possible that that's just a me thing. When I watched his film, though, it still, to me, sort of seemed like I don't really get why people are super high on this guy. Again, I don't necessarily hate the Titans taking that draft pick. I think the fact of the matter is, quarterback evaluation is so difficult that if he is someone who is, potentially going to be a good quarterback, if other people think he should have been a first round pick, it's probably still worth taking first in the second round, just on the principle of it. But, so far, it's not like he's been like going out there and throwing interceptions every play. I just don't see it. I just don't get what the value is right now with Will Levis. I think the most optimistic thing I'll say, maybe the best way to phrase it, is he's just a project quarterback. It's just going to take him some time. And for Tennessee, who maybe has kind of thought about, hey, let's see if we can, use Will Levis as a potential starter next year. Have him learn behind Tannehill this year. Tannehill's contract ends. Go with Will Levis. He hasn't shown anything in the preseason to make you think that that's a viable option. So, it's still early. It's just preseason. Who knows? But not a great start for someone who had a lot of haters to prove wrong and has yet to do it. Number 3, I'm going Anthony Richardson, who did not have a great PFF grade either, 52.9, but I thought was had a much more optimistic preseason, if that makes sense. And in fact, I think you could argue with either of these top 3 being number 1. I was very pleasantly surprised, or maybe even pleasantly surprised is the wrong word, but I was very pleased with what I saw from all of the top 3 options here. Richardson did not have as good of a game as the other 2 did. He is not as consistent as the other 2 were, and he had some worse performances for sure, which is why I had to drop him. But in many ways, for a second, I even considered putting him at 1, because what I really liked about Anthony Richardson was how much we saw from him that worked. A lot of this stuff, he's just a wild card, right? The reality is, how well is his running ability going to work at the NFL? We know he's built like a tank and runs like a cheetah, but still, there's plenty of great athletes at the NFL level. How well is that going to work at the NFL level? And, we have seen, obviously, the Justin Fields comparisons definitely, I think, are drawn for a valid reason, because Fields, another guy who, has still some issues to work on in his passing game, but his running ability is so good, it doesn't matter. He's still an effective quarterback. I think Richardson has shown he at least has that upside right away, which can get you really excited, and I'm buying into the hype for sure for Indianapolis. I don't know if it'll be this year. That's the one thing I have to say, and that's kind of what docked him a couple of spots and why he's at 3, is I just don't know. He still is just such a project quarterback, and he still did have some misses, some inaccurate passes that I'm just like, what are you doing out there? That's not even close. And he still had some bad moments, for sure. He is a roller coaster quarterback, but the reason why I'm a little bit hyped about him is because the roller coaster does go up pretty high. Goes down too, but we knew it was going to go down. We want to make sure it had those peaks, and so far it has. Number 2, maybe a hot take, but just hear me out. Bryce Young I have at number 2, not at number 1. You could argue he had the best preseason. I think many people would, not just Panthers fans, but many just, neutral fans would put him at 1. I thought he looked very good as well. I think the difference in kind of what separated him in number 1 is it's expectations. I expected good things from Bryce Young, and he met those expectations. And to me, that is kind of how I evaluate preseason. It's not necessarily, do I think that you're going, I'm not just looking at this. I'm not just saying who had the best preseason, end of sentence, who was better in the preseason. What I'm trying to do is, what did you do in the preseason to either raise or lower your stock? And Bryce Young raised it a little bit because he showed that what he did in college, he can do at the preseason level. So that still is impressive. But I felt like he was a pretty NFL-ready quarterback. And to me, he's just shown me he's an NFL-ready quarterback, which is, again, great. That's awesome. There's a lot of value in being an NFL-ready quarterback. I'm not saying that as a knock or anything, but just that's why I'm not giving him extra praise as I maybe would. Like, if Richardson came in and played as well as Bryce Young, he'd easily be number 1 because I don't expect Richardson to be able to do that right away. Bryce Young, he met his expectations. He did not exceed them. He did in little ways too. I thought in little ways, he had a good preseason for sure. And again, PFF grade, that's above average for a player already as a rookie. Like, that doesn't typically happen. So he was really good, but I just couldn't quite put him at number 1. Number 1, I'm going CJ Stroud. I am, which, you look at the PFF grade, it's almost identical. It's 0.1 difference. So PFF kind of says, yeah, dealer's choice there. I go with Stroud here because, again, expectations. I wasn't sure if Stroud was going to be able to come in and be good right away. He was much more of a project than Bryce Young, and I've been saying all preseason long that even though I liked Stroud better coming out of college, I think that Bryce Young would be the guy who I would bet on having the better rookie season. So the fact that Stroud came in and was, basically matched Bryce Young PFF grade-wise is optimistic. Now, I think a lot of people will bring up, first game wasn't his best game, and it wasn't. Stroud got a little rattled. Game moved a little fast for him, but I also thought that he improved, and it also showed some nice things in that first game that was got overlooked. I wasn't as negative on that first game as other people were, and I think CJ Stroud probably had the best back-to-back games out of anyone on this list with games 2 and games 3, despite game 3 not being a massive sample size. So to me, I think Stroud did show some negatives. He probably showed more negatives than Bryce Young. And in fact, I think if you're just, again, depends on how I phrase this question as part of the answer to it, right? If I'm just saying who was better in the preseason, I think you could probably say Bryce Young. But who impressed me the most this preseason, I would say, is CJ Stroud. So that's kind of why I have that differentiator there. A bit of a, almost becomes a bit of a logistics question to some degree. But either way, very impressive 3 of these guys, and I think they should all be good. Will Levis need some work? That's kind of how I viewed all of this. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. What were your thoughts on these 4 rookie quarterbacks? Who impressed you the most this preseason? Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.